I used to think my marriage was the kind of love people dreamed about. She was radiant, the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking in. Friends admired us, neighbors envied us, and I was convinced I had found the one person who would never let me down. I gave her my trust without hesitation. To me, she was everything: beautiful, intelligent, funny, and capable of making me feel like the luckiest man alive. For years, I never questioned her loyalty. I was proud to call her my wife, proud to believe we had built something unshakable together. But perfect things rarely stay perfect. Small details started to bother me, things I wanted to ignore at first but couldn't erase from my mind. She began dressing up more often, even when she claimed she was only running errands. She'd spritz on expensive perfume before leaving for quick trips that shouldn't have required it. She started taking her phone everywhere with her, never leaving it unattended, and the glow of the screen would linger against her face long into the night as she typed messages she claimed were about work. At first, I blamed myself for doubting her. I told myself she was stressed, that she deserved the freedom to dress how she wanted, that the world had become so busy and demanding it was normal for her to be caught up in it. I repeated these excuses over and over, almost like a prayer, trying to quiet the unease in my chest. But unease has a way of growing louder the more you try to silence it. The explanations she gave me started to feel thin. She would say she was working late, yet I noticed her makeup was fresher than it should have been after hours at the office. She would return home with a different kind of glow on her face, the kind I used to believe was reserved only for me. Her laughter became distant, offered more easily to others on the phone than to me across the dinner table. There were gaps in her stories, times when she claimed to be one place but slipped up in her own words the next day. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. For months, I forced myself to swallow every doubt, pretending it was just paranoia. I convinced myself that I was overthinking, that I was being unfair. But behind my calm smile, questions clawed at me. Why did she need to silence her phone the moment I walked into the room? Why did she smell like cologne that wasn't mine? Why did her eyes sometimes avoid mine when she slid into bed late at night, whispering excuses I no longer felt were meant for me? The truth was pressing against the walls of my mind, demanding to be faced. I could no longer lie to myself. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. And if I was going to survive it, I needed to know the truth once and for all. Doubt can eat away at a person in silence. I carried it like a stone in my chest, heavy and impossible to shake off. Every smile she gave me felt rehearsed, every excuse sharper than the last. I told myself that if I wanted peace, I needed proof that my instincts weren't lying to me. So I began to watch more closely, not out of paranoia, but out of the desperate need to protect myself from the cruel possibility that the woman I loved was no longer mine. I noticed patterns. Her so-called work nights grew more frequent, always on the same days of the week. She left home carefully dressed, wearing a glow that made my stomach twist. She carried herself differently, with a secretive confidence that told me someone else was making her feel alive. I stayed silent, but my eyes were wide open. I marked the hours she was gone, the time she said she was stuck in meetings, and the precise moment she would walk back into the house with that unfamiliar scent trailing behind her. The nights became the hardest. I would sit alone in the dim light of our living room, listening to the ticking clock, waiting for her footsteps on the porch. Some nights she came home just before midnight, other nights well past it, whispering about traffic, long calls, or last-minute deadlines. I nodded, playing the role of the patient husband, while inside me something dark began to grow. One evening, I decided I could no longer wait for her to hand me the truth. She claimed she was meeting a colleague to prepare for an early morning presentation. Her words were smooth, but her eyes betrayed her, shifting, hesitant, filled with a guilt she thought she was hiding. I followed quietly after she left, careful to keep my distance, careful not to let her see. My heart pounded as I watched her drive across town, far from her office, far from any place that could justify her excuses. She pulled into a quiet street, parked in front of a modest apartment building, and stepped out with a nervous smile that wasn't meant for me. A man was waiting at the entrance. He didn't look like a colleague. He didn't look like someone she feared being seen with. No, he looked like someone she longed for. I stayed in the shadows, watching her melt into his arms, watching him kiss her with a passion that once belonged to me. Every second carved into me like a blade. My mind screamed at me to confront her then and there, to drag her away and demand answers, but I didn't move. I froze, swallowed by a silence heavier than rage. That night, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger who had stolen her face, her touch, her love, and given it to someone else. When she finally returned home, slipping into bed with the same calm routine, I kept my eyes closed, my breathing steady, pretending to sleep. But my heart was wide awake. I now had my answer, and I knew pretending was over. If she believed she could betray me without consequence, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The hardest part of betrayal is hiding what you know. Every morning after I discovered the truth, I forced myself to act as if nothing had changed. I smiled when she spoke, kissed her cheek before she left, and asked the same small questions I had always asked. On the surface, I was the same husband she thought she could fool. But beneath the calm exterior, my mind was a storm. I had no interest in screaming or begging. I wanted her to feel the weight of her lies, to see the trap close around her without a chance to escape. So I planned. Slowly, quietly, with precision. I collected what I needed, evidence she didn't realize I had. Screenshots of her late-night messages she thought she had deleted, photographs of her secret meetings, and even small details she overlooked, like the restaurant receipt she stuffed into her bag and forgot about. Piece by piece, I built a portrait of her betrayal, something undeniable and merciless. But simply confronting her wasn't enough. Confrontations end in shouting, denials, and excuses. I wanted something sharper, something she would never forget. A moment where the mask she wore would shatter all at once. That was my goal. And the opportunity presented itself on another one of her so-called late nights. She dressed carefully, applying her makeup with the same care she used to give me when we were still in love. I complimented her, watched her smile in the mirror, and acted the part of a trusting fool. When she left, I wasn't angry. I was patient. I prepared the house for her return, making sure the stage was set for the moment she would slip back into bed beside me. I left the lights dim, the house quiet, exactly as she expected it to be. On her side of the bed, beneath her pillow, I placed the envelope. Inside was everything, the photos, the screenshots, the receipts, even a short note in my handwriting that read, "I know where you were. I know who you were with. And I know what you've done." Hours later, I heard her footsteps at the door. She moved quietly, almost tiptoeing, as if she could erase her absence with silence. She slipped off her shoes, crept into the bedroom, and slid under the blanket with practiced ease. I didn't move. I let her believe I was asleep, the loyal husband waiting unknowingly for her return. She shifted against the pillow, and then she felt it, the sharp edge of the envelope against her hand. Her breath caught. She froze, realizing it wasn't supposed to be there. I kept my breathing steady, my eyes closed, though I could feel her panic fill the room like smoke. She pulled the envelope out, opened it with trembling fingers, and the silence between us thickened with every second. I didn't need to see her face to know the shock, the fear, the sudden collapse of the false world she had built. She thought she had hidden everything. She thought she had fooled me. But as she sat there in the dark, clutching the truth in her hands, she finally realized. Her game was over. Morning arrived heavy and quiet. She didn't sleep much after finding the envelope. I felt her shifting beside me through the night, restless, suffocated by the evidence that lay exposed between us. I pretended to wake naturally, stretching as if it were just another day, while she sat on the edge of the bed, pale and nervous, clutching the remains of her lies in her trembling hands. Her eyes darted to me, searching for mercy, maybe for denial, but I gave her none. I sat up slowly, calm, deliberate. "So," I said evenly, "how long were you planning on keeping this from me?" The question cut through the room, stripping away the last of her defenses. She stammered, her voice breaking into excuses, blaming long hours, stress, even daring to suggest I was imagining things. But the evidence was undeniable, and she knew it. I didn't shout. I didn't raise my voice. Rage would have been too easy for her, a storm she could claim had pushed her into her mistakes. Instead, I stayed cold, controlled, laying out each piece of proof in front of her like a surgeon revealing the damage. Every photo, every message, every lie she thought was hidden. I recited it all with precision, leaving her cornered. There was no escape, no ground left to stand on. Her tears came fast, the same tears she once used to win my sympathy. She begged, swore it was a mistake, promised it meant nothing, that she still loved me. But love doesn't sneak into someone else's arms. Love doesn't come home reeking of perfume and lies. Her words fell flat, meaningless against the weight of her betrayal. I told her what hurt most wasn't the act itself, but the way she made me believe I was crazy for suspecting it. The night she looked me in the eye and lied, the way she used my trust against me, that was the deepest cut. She wanted forgiveness, but what she truly feared was consequence. And I was ready to give her both an ending and a lesson. I stood up, collected the evidence from the bed, and told her calmly that whatever we had was finished. There was no screaming, no dramatic outburst, only the quiet finality of a door closing for the last time. I made it clear she could keep her lies, her lover, and her guilt, but she would never again have the comfort of my blind trust. Her sobs followed me through the house as I gathered what I needed and walked away. For years I had given her my loyalty, my love, my everything. In return, she had handed it to another man. Now all that remained was the silence of a home that no longer belonged to us. She thought she could slip into bed beside me as if nothing had happened. Instead, she found my nasty surprise waiting for her, and with it, the truth she could never bury again. That was the night her betrayal ended, and my freedom began.